Good evening, everyone. If I could have you fill in a little bit, that would be wonderful. My name is Peter Millibar. I'm the Conservative candidate for Kamloops Centre, and it's my pleasure to welcome all of you here this evening. We also have Ward Stamer with us from Kamloops North Thompson. We'll hear from Ward at the end of the evening, but we also have Lauren Dirksen here from the new Caribou-Chilcotin, which borders on Kamloops. So the main event that we're all here for, though, is to hear from our leader, John Rustad. And really, over the last couple of years, myself included, I think everyone's been surprised to just see the momentum that has been gaining in BC over that time frame. And we are on the cusp at this point of knocking the NDP out of office. Because who thinks 7 years of NDP rule has been too long? The bad news is they've been in for 7.5 years. So we really need to get them out. But in all seriousness, we cannot continue on where we're at. John, I'm really excited to have him talk tonight to really bring forward the vision that he has for this province that everyone's been getting behind. And, you know, John's been around for a little while now. He was a former cabinet minister. He's been in that legislature for a while. I had the privilege of sitting next to John for 3.5 years in the chamber when I first got elected in 2017. We sat right next to each other for that time frame. And it was always great conversations. And so, you know, I think I'll let John speak for himself. And who here would love to hear from the next Premier of British Columbia, John Rustad.
All right. Great to be able to be here. I'm so happy to be back in Kamloops, and I'm so happy to be here with Peter and with Ward. Thank you so much for the work that these guys are doing. I tell you, it's been absolutely fabulous, this council. Who's ready to make sure we turn this region blue? Oh, come on. You guys can do better than that. Who's ready to turn the province blue? All right. See my friend Lauren Dirksen as well, our candidate here from the Caribou-Chilcotin. Thank you for being here as well, Lauren. Great to see you here. And I want to take a minute just to introduce my wife, Kim. She's hiding in the corner here. I can tell you, I wouldn't be doing this today without Kim, without her support, without her encouragement. There was a little while ago when I was an independent, and I kind of wondering what the path was forward, and it was Kim who's the one who pushed me and said, you know what, you got to do this. You got to go after leadership in this province, and I'm so glad that she did, because I tell you something, when we go around this province, we look at the changes needed in BC, it's really quite something to see the groundswell that we've managed to build. I mean, this is really a grassroots movement that is coming from all corners of the province, whether it's Surrey, whether it's the island, whether it's the north, whether it's the Kootenays, whether it's the interior. Right across this province, people are looking for change. And I can understand why. I mean, you look what's going on with David Eby right now and this government. $9 billion deficit. They just announced their platform today, and they're going to go from a $9 billion deficit to a $26 billion deficit in British Columbia. I mean, it's remarkable to even think that this is their plan and this is how they think they can grow this province. It's absolutely crazy. So a Conservative government, I tell you what we're going to be focused on. We're going to be focused on people. We're going to make sure that we do everything we can to put money back into people's pockets. So the first thing that we are going to do as a government is we're going to scrap the carbon tax. We're going to get that out of... But I tell you what, we're going to do more than that. We're not only just getting rid of the carbon tax, we're going to get rid of the low carbon fuel emission standards. Between the two, according to the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, that is almost 36 cents a litre that we'll be saving for people right away in British Columbia. But we're not going to stop there. We've got to do a lot more to be able to help with affordability. So that's why the staff have called it the Rustad rebate. We've introduced the Rustad rebate. What that'll be is $3,000 a month when it's fully implemented, that you can write off against your mortgage, your rent, or even your strata fees, and that'll be up to $36,000 a year as a tax credit. Now, it's not 36 immediately off the taxes because we do need some revenue, but it is coming off of the bottom end of the taxes. That'll save people about $1,800 a year in terms of their rent and their mortgages. And we're doing this because we have to do everything we can to be able to get money back in people's pockets. It's far better for you guys to keep the money directly than it is to give it to government and then figure out how government wastes half of it before they try to get some help back to you. So this is some of the things we're doing in the relief. We've got a few more things, and I really had to laugh today. So as the NDP released their platform, we released a ton of stuff this morning about how we're doing bridges, including the bridge here in Kamloops that needs to get rebuilt. Lots of work that needs to be done around this province. We put forward our path to prosperity, getting all the regulations out, getting to a place where we cut all this red tape and process. And then, of course, the NDP came out with their platform, and we released one other little minor thing. That is, we're going to get rid of plastic straws because they just suck, right? I mean, they do. We got to go back to, these paper straws, as you say, we got to go back to using plastic straws. And the funny thing is, from the media, they actually said that there is nothing better than the NDP platform. There's nothing in the NDP platform that even compares to the popularity of bringing back plastic straws and getting rid of these paper straws. So it was quite funny to watch how some things could really resonate with people. The big piece is cutting taxes is great. We got to get rid of this thing. We've got to be able to deal with that. We got a $9 billion deficit to get rid of. But in order to do that, we've got to get our economy going. I mean, it's just plain and simple. Our economy is in shambles. Right now, it's at about 1.5% GDP. If going forward with Clean BC and all their efforts, it's going to shrink, estimated to be just 0.4% GDP by 2030. And that's even without a recession. And what that means is a continual decline in our quality of life, a continual decline in our ability to be able to provide services. So we have to actually get focused on getting our economy going, something that has been ignored by this NDP government. I mean, think about this. We've had almost zero job growth in the private sector under the NDP. We've had a massive job growth in the public sector. For all that job growth in the public sector and all that increase in spending of government, can anybody point to anything that's better after 7 years? I mean, is there anything? Nothing I can see either. So we've got to figure out how we make sure we get the economy going. So we're going to start with things like forestry. Or the forestry platform. We're going to do everything we can to get people back to work. I mean, people just want jobs. They don't want programs and bridges and all the rest of this kind of stuff. They want to be able to work. They want to be able to provide for their family. So we're going to make sure that we take major steps to get the forest industry up and running. We're going to make sure the wood is available. We're going to get all of that red tape and permitting out of the way, get down to a single project, a single permit process. We're going to make sure that we get rid of stumpage, put it on the back end, help to drive down those cost structures. We're going to make the logs available through the various processes we're going to do. And all of this is going to be to make sure that our forest sector can get its feet back under it. Because without a healthy forest sector, you don't have healthy communities, you don't have healthy families. So many people depend on our forest sector. But forestry is only one component. There's one other important little piece to think about forestry, and that's what's going on with the Americans. Right now, we've got these massive tariffs that are in place. Our forest sector has paid $8 billion into these tariffs over the last 7 years under the NDP. And what have the NDP done? Nothing to solve this. The worst part is, what it looks like is those tariffs are going to increase by 40% by next August. If we do not get this resolved, it will shut down the remainder of our forest sector. And that cannot happen in British Columbia. It's too important. So priority for us is going to be to get this thing done. I mean, we got an American election that's going on. I don't care who wins, whoever it is, that's fine. But we've got to get down and get to the table and get this thing resolved before August. So that'll be a priority. And if the federal government doesn't want to come to the table, we will go it ourselves. We'll get this whole thing done the best we can here for British Columbia, because we cannot leave our forestry workers, we cannot leave our forestry communities hung out to dry like that. So we'll make sure that we get this thing done as quickly as we can down south and end these silly tariffs so that we can actually get to a place where people can put back to work. Forestry, though, is only one part of getting our economy up and running. There are 17 mines in this project, in this province, that are either permitted or about to be permitted. That represents a $38 billion investment in BC. The thousands upon thousands of jobs that will be created, and over the life of those mines will add almost $800 billion to British Columbia's GDP. And the reason this is important, we got to get these things off the ground and up and running. Right now, they're hung up. Nobody wants to invest in this province. Nobody has the confidence to put the money in BC. This has to change. We've got to once again strip all the bureaucracy out, get these things up and running. Because if we want to solve our deficit, if we want to be able to have more tax relief, if we want to be able to pay for the programs that we need in health and education, we need the revenue. These mines, if they get up and running, between the revenue from the mines as well as the secondary and tertiary jobs in terms of supporting the mines, that should generate almost enough revenue by itself to eliminate our deficit. This is the thing that needs to be done. So we are going to make sure that we get government out of the way, that we get these things off the ground, and make sure that British Columbia can get back to work again. We need this revenue, and we need the jobs, and we know how important it is for communities across this province to be able to have that support. There's something else, though, that we need to think about as well, and that is our natural gas. We've got one LNG project that is done phase 1. They would love to go ahead with building phase 2, except for one thing. The government has put so many restrictions in place that they can't. By forcing them to use electricity for compression, it makes no sense. The math just doesn't work. So we're going to remove those restrictions. We're going to make sure that we can use natural gas for compression. There's 3 more pipes that are permitted to the coast right now. All the agreements with First Nations are done. They're ready to go. The problem is they start expiring. The permits start expiring in November. If we lose this election and those permits expire, what will end up happening is they'll have to go back into the environmental assessment process. It'll cost between $300 million and $1 billion per pipe and take a decade to get done. We will lose this opportunity for yet another generation. So the first thing a Conservative government will do upon forming a government is we will pass an order in council to give these pipes a 10-year extension so that we don't have to go through this process, and we can make sure that we can realize the potential of exporting more natural gas in this province. We're going to remove the restrictions on having to use electricity for compression so that they can get actually to doing this thing done. Then we'll sit down with First Nations, we'll work on getting the sites designated for these projects, and the idea being to get another 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 more of these things built. Every 3 years or so, get another one of these projects up and running. So we build out a generation of these types of projects and get that revenue that we need in British Columbia. So those are all the things we need to do just on the resource side. There's more that we need to do there, but at the end of the day, we got to be able to have business that can operate in this province. So one of the things that we're going to do, and we recognize small business is the backbone of activity in British Columbia. So we are committed to reducing the small business tax to 1%, with a goal as soon as we can have the revenue and the ability to do it, we're going to eliminate the small business tax in BC entirely. We need to make sure that these jobs are created. The small business sector is the one that does it. We need that growth in BC. So we're going to do everything we can support. But another big piece of that, because taxation, that isn't that big a deal, it's all the regulations and how it makes it so difficult to actually do business. I was in Coquitlam just the other day, and I was talking with a small business owner there, and he's got this operation. It's both grocery and a restaurant and a number of other things that they do. Because of the NDP taxes and the process and all of the red tape that they've had to do, including things like the employer health tax, they've actually had to lay off 68 people since the NDP came into power. They've had to strip it down to the bones just to try to stay open and keep the doors open. This has to change. We've got to make sure that businesses can succeed in this province, because if we want to solve affordability, you need to have higher wages. And to have higher wages, you need to be able to have companies that can succeed and have a good profit margin. So we'll be focused on making sure that we do this. But business, what government can do on that side is only half the story. We got to address crime in this province. Like, what's going on in British Columbia is just wrong. You know, when you got a company like Save On Foods that has to hire 345 security guards around the province, when you've got all these small businesses that are struggling and with having all the losses that are walking out the doors, criminals are being emboldened. There is no consequence for doing these crimes. They're just going over and over again, getting more and bolder in terms of and how they go. And the police are telling me that 20% of these criminals are committing 80% of the crimes. We have to get these people off our streets. We have to make sure that businesses can succeed and that people can have safe communities. So there's a number of things we're going to do, and we're going to be announcing a lot of that here in the days to come. But it's going to involve changing some things at the court system, making sure that we can get people through faster, as well as at Crown prosecution. We're going to make sure that we support our police in terms of the work that needs to be done. We're going to push for changes federally, and not just for changes to the bail reform that's needed, but we're going to push for guaranteed minimum sentencing. For these prolific offenders, we need to get them off our streets. But we have another problem as well, which is these prolific violent offenders. These people that have a history of violence, often with weapons, that are just rotated and put back out on the street. And I was talking with one family in Surrey, and I pray to God that this never happens to any family in this province. There was a prolific violent offender, well known to the police, multiple charges with weapons offenses, who was put back out on the street and killed their daughter. And you know, I talked to the father about this, and you know, he was in tears, but he said, I want no other family to have to go through this. This needs to change in British Columbia. And so what we will do, if the legal system cannot hold these people and get them off our streets, we will use the Mental Health Act. If somebody's at risk of harming themselves or others, we can hold them and treat them and not release them until they're no longer at risk. We need to get these people off our streets. And furthermore, if we end up, and no doubt there's going to be a Section 7 challenge, which is a human rights challenge saying that we're taking away their rights. And I understand that. I understand individuals' rights are important. But what about the rights of the rest of the people in this province? What about our rights? People should have the right to be able to be safe, to be able to walk down the street, to be able to carry on with business. People should have the right for their children to be able to go to school and come back and not have these sort of horrific crimes happening. So if we have to, we'll fight this in court, but if we have to, we're prepared to use the notwithstanding clause to make sure that we keep these people off our streets. Crime is only one side of what's going on. Of course, we've got this issue with drugs and addiction that's happening in BC. And once again, it's horrendous to think about how bad this has gotten. So we're going to end decriminalization. We're going to make sure that we get these safe supply off the streets. It is not safe supplies. We need to be able to bring this to an end. But more than that, as we take this approach of ending that NDP experiment on British Columbia, which has just been horrendous, we're going to make sure that we build out a significant amount of recovery. Everything from doctor-prescribed treatment to short-term treatment and recovery to long-term recovery to things like compassionate involuntary recovery. And what I mean by that is this, and I was talking with a family not long ago whose child has died from an overdose. At 11 years old, this young lady had suffered from addiction. The parents tried to do everything they could to be able to help this child. And the child did not want to go into treatment and recovery, and the parents could not do anything. And I just think that's wrong in British Columbia. Any parent would want to do everything they can to get their child into treatment, into recovery, to be able to live a full and meaningful life in British Columbia. And if we can't make that happen in British Columbia, we will have to change the laws to make it happen. So that is what we will do. I brought this up at the debate just the other day with David Eby and said, look, this we're going to do. We're going to make sure that parents have the right to be able to put their child into treatment and recovery so that they can live those full lives. And Eby said, well, hold on. It's complicated. And I said, David Eby, no, it's not. We just need to do everything we can to make sure parents have that right and people can get the treatment that they need in British Columbia. We also have to make sure, quite frankly, that we have long-term care for some people. The reality is today the street drugs that are out there within 2 to 3 years can cause permanent brain damage. There are people today who will never be able to function in our society. And I don't think it's compassionate or fair for a government to say it's okay for them to live on a street. It's okay for them to live in those kind of conditions that we find is absolutely horrific. So we will set out a process. We're going to look at Riverview and open it up as a we want it to become a center of excellence in terms of long-term care. We're also going to look at additional facilities as well. We need to make sure that we have that option so that these people who are in this situation can be looked after and given the best quality of life we can. It's just the right thing to do, and it's a compassionate thing that government should be doing for people in this province. Couple other little things to talk about, and they're not so little, believe me. There's so many things that we need to do. I keep telling our candidates, and I've told Ward and Lauren this, and I've told Peter this as well. Be prepared to do a lot of work because there is so much that needs to get done, and we are not going to stop. We're going to be pushing on the gas pedal continuously to make these changes happen. Things like, for example, in our education system, we need to be teaching kids how to think, not what to think. And that means whether it's ideologically driven, whether it's socially driven, whether it's environmentally driven, we need to make sure that all the material that we have that's available in our schools is neutral and is focusing kids, teaching kids that critical thinking about how to think and preparing them for the future. That means things like SOJI will have to go out of our school. We're going to make sure that we support parents' rights. We're going to make sure that parents have the right to know what's going on with their children in school, that teachers should be letting parents know everything that's happening. We're going to make sure also that we put a very strong anti-bullying program in place and support in place because we want to make sure every child can feel safe in school and have those opportunities. But when it comes to letting parents know, I was talking with one parent whose child was addicted to drugs. In grade 9, the teacher knew about it and did not tell the parents. It wasn't until a number of years later when the child was now 16 that the parents finally understood that there was an addiction problem, and once again was fighting to try to do everything they could and was frustrated, and tragically that child did die from an overdose. But it started by the fact that the teachers did not have that relationship with the parents and did not let the parents know what was going on with the child so that there could have been an earlier intervention. We need to change this. We need to make sure that parents know everything that's going on with their kids and have those rights. And when it comes to health care, I can tell you this, the mandates that have been removed, which are not removed, all those silly restriction stuff, they are going to go. We're going to make sure that we do everything we can to hire back our healthcare workers that have been let go in this province. And furthermore, when our chief health officer is out in Ottawa saying that we need to expand safe supply in our society and that we may have to make it available in our grocery stores, we need to double down on decriminalization. I'm sorry, Bonnie Henry will not be working for a Conservative government. But when it comes to health care, I can tell you there's so much that we need to do in this province around our system. It is broken. It is broken right now. It is in a crisis. We can't get family doctors. The wait times in ERs are way, way too long. 10, 12 hours can happen in major communities. We have so many communities like in Merritt and other communities where ERs are closing or having to divert to other communities. There is so much that is going on that is wrong in the healthcare system. We have the second most expensive healthcare system in the 30 top nations in the world. Second most expensive. And we are getting the second worst outcomes by almost all measures. Second most expensive and second worst outcomes. Doing more of the same is not going to change those results. We have to be brave enough to say that our healthcare system needs to change. We need to be brave enough to look at different models. So we are looking at the models that are near the top of those results. European models that are universal healthcare, just like we have, single government paid, but they're delivered by both government and non-government agencies, and the money follows the patient instead of the system. Today we got a government which just 2 years ago was in court arguing essentially that the system was more important than patient suffering. The tragedy is a judge agreed with them. And I think that is completely wrong. It should be all about the patient, not the system. So we make sure the money follows the patient, make sure that we get the innovation that we need, make sure that we get the investment we need to better utilize our healthcare professionals and make those changes so that people can actually get the services they need in healthcare. It's the right thing to do for our province. It's going to kick up a lot of fuss because it's going to change, but we can do all this underneath the Canada Health Act. We don't have to take on Ottawa with this, and we can implement that same models that are in Europe, which are far more successful at both attracting professionals and retaining professionals and providing those services that we need. We'll do those changes for British Columbia. And when it comes to red tape and extra bureaucracy, I think it was Mark Twain that said the bureaucracy is expanding to support the expanding bureaucracy. And there's no question in my mind that in healthcare that is very, very true. We have in Germany, for example, that has twice the population of Canada. Canada has 10 times as many administrators in health. Close to 40% of our nurses are administrators. We need these people to be working on the front lines and be able to support patients, support services. We don't need more paper being pushed. So this is a big shift as well that'll come as part of the changes we need for our healthcare system, is to make sure that that all the dollars we have are focused there on delivering services. We're going to be expanding the spending on healthcare as well as part of this, because we need that to be able to make up the time that we have with these long wait lists that we have in British Columbia. David Eby, however, is out there saying the Conservatives are going to cut $4 billion out of healthcare, and we're going to bring back MSP, and we're going to do bridge tolls, and I'm sure he's got lots of other things he's saying about it. All this is just lies. I mean, I'm sorry. It's no other way to put it. It's just lies. A simple misinformation campaign that they're doing. They cannot defend the damage they've done to British Columbia, so all they're trying to do is use fear-mongering. We're going to call them out for that. We're going to call them out for the damages, but most importantly, we're going to make sure we stay focused on telling people what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and bring back hope for people in British Columbia. At the end of the day, I think of it this way. We've got a government that says it's wrong to call people British Columbians because it could offend some people. I'm sorry, but I'm a proud Canadian. I'm a proud British Columbian, and I don't think it's wrong to call people British Columbians and to have that pride in this province. We have all the resources you could ever want. We have all the potential we could ever want. Yet 1 in 3 British Columbians are thinking about leaving. 1 in 2 youth are thinking about leaving this province. That's our future. These are the people that are going to be there to help the next generation to be able to build this province, and they want to leave. And I understand why. They can't afford to live here. The crime is too bad. Our healthcare system's collapsing. We don't have the housing. We've got all this, the drugs and stuff that's on the street. Our finances are a wreck. I get it. I get why they want to leave. And somebody asked me, though, what does success look like for the Conservative Party? Well, I can tell you, if we have that honor of forming government, success to me is that 4 years from now, those 1 and 2 youth that are thinking about leaving are going to want to stay in this province, and youth from across this country are going to live here because they can come and build a future in British Columbia. It's time we deliver common sense change for British Columbia. It's time we get government out of the way. It's time we just get back to the basics and make sure that people can be prosperous and live a future in British Columbia. That's what the Conservative Party is all about. That's what we'll deliver. And with people like Peter and Ward and Lorne and all of our candidates in this area, I can promise you this. We will deliver this for people in British Columbia. We'll make sure that you can be proud again to be called British Columbian. Thanks very much for coming out, everyone, and thanks for being part of the change that we need.
All right, let's hear it. Does it work?